I am thrilled to be with Judith Cruz today. Judith is a native Texan. She's got Guatemalan heritage. She's in Houston with her husband and three sons. She has a BA from the UT Austin and then Master of Arts in Curriculum and Instruction from George Washington University. She has a ton of experience, over 25 years as an educator, nonprofit leader, volunteer. One of the things that has impressed me so much about Judith is that she served on the Houston Independent School District Board, was actually the board president. And now she's been the Texas Assistant Director of Houston Region at EdTrust in Texas, also in her past. So there's so much about Judith that I'm excited to dig in. We are actually coaches with the Leadership for Educational Equity organization. So this is something that we've shared. Judith, I'm grateful to know you. Thank you so much for taking time. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Annalisa. Very excited to be here and just always great to chat with you.
So Judith, let's start with your identity. Can you share how do you identify and how has that shaped your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always list mother first. I'm first and foremost a mom. I have three sons, all teenagers. I'm a Latina, a Tejana. I grew up in Texas, very much identify with those roots. Feel part Mexican because I grew up so close to the border. I'm also a woman of faith that really does define a lot of what I do and shapes my decisions and my outlook on life. Um, I'm a true believer in human rights and injustice. That really stems from my upbringing. And I always say that I'm kind of obsessed with education and education advocacy. And I'll talk a lot more about that. But really what shaped, I would say, my career path is my upbringing. My parents really rooted us in social justice from a very young age. I mean, I saw them in action doing very grassroots work to improve people's lives. One of my earliest memories, I was 5 years old when Jesse Jackson ran for president, and we had the buttons, the Rainbow Coalition. I remember canvassing with my parents, and I had no idea, right, what that actually meant in a large context. I just remember being excited and it was fun, but just that just shows at a very early age my parents were instilling that in us.
So Judith, it sounds like you have had a foundation where you've been with community, you've had your faith, you've had people model for you what it means to stand up and do something different for all that we have in America, but also that there can be ways in which we can shape the future. And so I want to fast forward here. You end up being a teacher, you're in TFA, you're working through education, you share that you're passionate about student outcomes, and you're also a mother. And so here you are, and this is why I was so fascinated because not only did you take this career path of education, but you jumped into, I would say, some of these hot seats, which is serving on a board. Can you tell us about that? Because often people don't follow that career path and add, it's a volunteer position. Like, tell me about how this happened in your life.
Ooh, it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. I mean, it's interesting because I actually ran twice for the school board. And the first time I ran, I had left the classroom, which I thought was temporary. I had three kids under the age of 5 and just wanted to dedicate a little bit of time to them. And I was approached about running for the school board. And when I was approached, I was like, I couldn't even have told you who was on the school board when I was a classroom teacher. I just stayed in my classroom, did my magic. I knew there were people that made decisions, especially when it came to resources, but I didn't really pay attention. And so my first thought was, yeah, I mean, this is good for kids, right? I can have an impact on children. Like, I want to make a difference in children's lives. I had no idea big city politics, the amount of contracts that come before school boards and all of the just outside influences. So I thought, okay, sure, let's, consider this. Ended up running in a 6-person race. It was an open election. The person had resigned with 1 year left of her term. And, I had no name recognition. I was a mom, I was a teacher. Um, no, I wasn't in politics. I didn't rub shoulders with folks. And but I blocked walk and my family blocked walk like crazy. And I ended up coming in a very strong lead. There were six of us on the ballot, right? And so two of us went into a runoff because in Texas, if you don't have 50% of the vote in a school board race, you have to go into a runoff. And lost by 44 votes. It was the only thing on the ballot the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And didn't think I was ever going to run again. It was a very eye-opening experience, and I realized very quickly that school boards are very political. They deal with a lot of things that don't always have to deal with um, the education of students. And so I was like, I'll just go back to the classroom and I'll do my thing. But after having that experience, then it's like I kind of got catapulted into being a leader in the community. It was like my life changed overnight, essentially. The community, a lot of parents viewed me as someone, oh, you know how to work the system. You're the person I can go to with questions. You can help me navigate this. And then folks in the city, viewed me as, okay, there's this Latina from the East End. She's grassroots. She's from the community. She speaks for the community, and so just my positioning changed very quickly. And I spent 9 years trying to find someone else to run. I was like, okay, like a year later there was the regular election, 4 years later another election, and then by the time I ran again, the school board was under investigation. There was a threat of a state takeover because of student outcomes, and I kept looking around, and I'm like, I mean, I had asked several people, come on, you want to do this? But, most people are like, this is volunteer position. People yell at you, people hate you. You're never well liked because you're always making tough decisions. So it was really hard to find someone who was willing. And like I said, I had never imagined, but, my faith definitely drives a lot of what I do. And I felt very compelled to do it again, even though I knew it was going to be crazy. And even though there was a part of me that was like, oh, is this really what I want to do? Um, so it's interesting, the reflection and all the lessons learned and getting into those positions. But I definitely, it's not something I regret at all. And a lot of us go into this thinking, oh, I'm going to be the one that can make the difference, right? I'm the one that can be the change. I'm going to be better than the previous board member or the previous board. But systems this large are very, very hard to change, right? And it's the long game coming into these positions and thinking about what is it that I can make a difference doing. So it was a hard lesson to learn that I couldn't, me alone, right, couldn't be that change that I wanted to be. It doesn't mean that I couldn't change and make small changes, but definitely learned a lot through the process, and it's opened so many doors in the sense of the lessons that I learned. I mean, there's nothing quite like being on a school board. It's different from other elected positions, and those skills that I developed, I'm able to take with me to so many different settings that I lead.
Judith, there's so much there. I'm so excited to dig in. I want to start with talk to us because often we know it's a hairy system. We want change. We're very mission aligned. We have our own unique experiences, our identities that drive us to the work. And yet you said it that because of the system that we live in, and it's not an individual who will change, it's got to be something else. Can you tell us the school board itself, being a member of the school board, why is that an important rule for specific change? Could you get into it to say,
Yeah.
here's what a member of the school board can do that not a teacher can do, a principal, a community leader? Like, what is the unique position of a school board member to actual change?
Yeah, absolutely. School boards have a ton of power and oversee. I mean, you think about the budgets alone, right, and how they allocate resources. Um, the main responsibilities of school boards are to hire and manage a superintendent, adopt an annual budget. And I think the most important thing is to set goals and monitor student outcome goals that really should drive um, the vision and the work of the district. Um, so when you think about like all the things that there's contracts that you have to approve, so many different things that come before a school board, and it's really easy to get distracted by so many things. And then there's folks showing up to school board meetings or emailing you and saying, "Hey, I have these issues. This is happening at my school." But really, the job of a school board member is to govern and really hold the superintendent accountable to what the vision of the school board is. And if you think about the purpose of a school district, right, it's to um, educate students to make sure that they are learning to the best of their abilities, that they're able to not just do basic reading and math and writing, but be able to live out their dreams and be able to have a fulfilling life after they graduate high school, right? So all of the K-12 system is designed to set up to prepare students for that.
Judith,
Um,
and with that said, I want to dig into something you said earlier, which is it's political. And a lot of the things that we deal with actually don't relate to
yeah,
educating kids. Can you talk about that? Because, and thank you so much in advance for your transparency, but okay, Misha, that sounds great. I want to join a school board. I want to
yes,
support students and their well-beings and their dreams. That sounds amazing. And I mean, tell me the ugly side. Like the reality
yes.
is that, tell me the reality and what we'd have to face if someone were to try to follow in your footsteps to also serve.
Yes. And so like ideally, right, that's what the school system exists for. The role of a school board member is to drive that vision, to make sure that you're holding a superintendent accountable. But right, it's like what you're talking about. It is so hard because politics come into play, interpersonal disagreements, right? I mean, you're a body of people, and you need enough votes to be able to get the things, the finish line that you want, or to be able to drive those changes further. But the interpersonal disagreement can really get in the way of really positive change, which sounds very like simple, like, well, can't you just all get along? Right. And obviously we can see that on a macro level that can be really, really hard, and even on a micro level. For example, my first 2 years on the board, we were all female, all Democrats. 8 of the 9 were women of color. You would have thought we were living the dream. And the second 2 years, the last 2 years of my 4-year term, I actually feel like we got more done than the first 2 years, because it was just like the interpersonal stuff took over where we should have been so aligned. So that can really get in the way.
So Julia,
And
let's actually like if, without saying names, right, and having like utmost respect for the people we work with. An
yeah,
example of that
absolutely.
is like what that person like red, I like green. Like give me an example of what does it mean interpersonal? Like are we talking about someone was bad mouthing? Are you
Yes,
talking about someone was stubborn? Like what do you mean?
kind of all of the above. I mean, it can almost feel like middle school behavior in a sense. I don't know what it is. It's like we revert to some of those behaviors. Um, and there's, we're always going to have differences, right? That's what makes humanity amazing, right? We're not all going to agree, even if we're of the same political affiliation or not. We're going to have disagreements, but it's one thing to like take that disagreement to another level, to have disrespect, or to draw things out. When I was on the board, I really, and especially when I was board chair, really made an effort to, like, if something bubbled up, it was like, let's resolve this immediately. If I need to apologize, I will apologize. Like, let's have a conversation like that next day about what happened, because then it's like any other relationship. It's like feelings fester. I mean, it's very much like um, being in a marriage or any other, you're working with these people day in and day out very closely, making really hard decisions. And so feelings can get heightened very, very quickly, right? These are they can feel very personal, especially if we feel like, oh, the kids in my neighborhood or my community are getting shortchanged versus someone else's. But when you're on the board, you really have to look at things in a bird's eye view and make decisions for the system, which can be very, very difficult. And especially if you have folks that are pulling on you, um, and it could be personal friends, right? People that help you block walk, and they're saying, "Hey, this doesn't this doesn't jive with me." But in your heart and in your mind, and looking at all the data, right, you know what's going to be best for the system. Those are very, very tough decisions, and so the feelings get heightened. And I think when feelings get heightened, then it's very easy to have misunderstandings, to take things personally, to say things that we probably shouldn't have said, and can be very offensive. And so then it just starts to unravel, and you're like, we're not even talking about what we're here to talk about anymore. It now has become some other conversation, right? I mean, think about when you have a disagreement or a fight with your spouse or a sibling, right? What you end up fighting about like hours later is not what you originally thought about. So it's very similar.
Judith, I want to go to this idea of loyalty, right? Because you mentioned it earlier. So I'm in your corner. I imagine I'm giving you not just my time and speaking about like please vote for her, block walking with you, but I'm also talking about maybe even giving money, right? Because it requires funds to run for
Yep.
something. And I'm curious, like how does one take a leadership stance where the people who supported you to get in that role, you'll need to make a decision that trades off that
Yeah.
loyalty, that commitment to
Mhm.
do what you think is right for the system or for whatever else. Like how hard is that? It feels impossible,
It's very
honestly.
hard. It's
Yeah. So
very
tell me
hard.
about
And you
that. If you
have
have
to
an
be,
example, that would be amazing.
I'll try to think of an example. You have to be really centered on your values. And I would say even before you run, if that's something you're considering doing, and really in any leadership role that where you have to make tough decisions, you really have to be centered on your values and what you know to be right. And like, I'm not talking about like right versus wrong. It's just like what you know is right and what you know is best for big, large systems, right? And I mean, I'm a pretty stubborn person, and I'm a person like that. You know, when I know something's right, it's like I can be very grounded in that decision. But it doesn't mean that it there aren't moments, you know, leading up to those decisions that I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Right. And thinking about, yeah, like if there were people that block walk for me or donors that I knew would disagree with a certain decision, um, that it was going to be really hard. I mean, as an example, so this kind of is the example I'm going to give. There were a lot of influences coming at us, not just necessarily people that had supported me. So I had asked the board president to place an agenda item for voting on a superintendent search. We had had an interim superintendent for almost 3 years, I think 2.5 years at the time. Again, we were like on the threat of state takeover all of this time. Um, and in order to get something placed on the agenda, you needed at least 3 board members. So I'd asked 2 other board members to sign on to it with me. She placed it on the agenda. When other board members found out, they were very upset. And I started to get calls from so many community members, other elected officials, Congress people asking me to vote against it, to take it off the agenda. Um, I mean, that could have easily been something like very, very, I mean, it was contentious, but I could have easily just given in and said, you know, the pressure's too high. The interim superintendent we have, let's just keep her. And I was open to keeping her, but I felt like we needed to do it as part of a search, right? And do the whole process, you know, as best practice. Um, but it was even up until, I mean, I remember that very day of the meeting getting tons of calls. So and that's just like one example. There were a lot of contentious votes um, that would, you know, especially like we could be working really, really well together and making progress and getting things done. And then a vote like that it was like it would take us backwards. And I feel like the progress we would make would all unravel, right? And then we'd go back into our divisions, kind of factions that we have on the board. And then it was like, okay, let's start. It was like we had to rebuild, every single time and kind of almost start over. And, people felt betrayed or felt like, for many different reasons, right? There was some racial tension, with that decision as well that made things
Judith,
a lot more complicated.
I mean, you're sharing these, this is hard work, hard
Hmm.
leadership work. And
Yes.
now you're getting a ton of press, a ton of publicity, and especially if it doesn't go their way. And you can imagine that sometimes it was a risk to you. So I want to talk about
Hmm.
this idea of service because there are people I know in our networks who truly want to make a difference. And this is the reality is that it's not going to be clean and everyone's, just getting along and singing songs. It's going to be difficult. And so imagine if someone was said, I'm willing to face these challenges. It's worth it to me. And so I'd love for you to just, what advice would you give as someone who it feels like a bit like you fell into it, but then just stuck with it? Can you
Yeah.
give advice for someone interested? Judith, also want to serve on a school board. I'm interested. What advice would you give?
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because I don't think, I don't meet a lot of people that are like, oh my gosh, my dream is to serve on a school board, right? It's almost like you want the person that is running away from this, because you want someone that is doing it with their whole heart and not, because you'll get folks that run for school board that are wanting to climb, a political ladder and run for other things, and that can be, it's not like they can show up as great school board members even if they have higher office, in their future. So I'm not saying that, but a lot of times that can be a distraction. And so if you've got someone that is just, I want to do this with full intention, I have the best interest of kids on my mind, then I say, let's do it. Right. And even though it is, super hard and can feel, like you're taking, 2 steps forward and 5 steps backward, um, it is possible to steer, even if it is a teeny bit, steer the ship in the right direction. And what I tell folks is at the very least, you can keep things from going backwards, right? It can feel like, oh my gosh, I want more students to read. I want more students to be prepared for life after high school. But you also don't want things to go backwards. And so if you can at least hold that line, that is also, really, really critical. And, it's hard because you've got these systems that it's entrenched, right? But I think the way to get things done, is really the relationship, and that I can't emphasize that piece enough. Um, and you have to be willing to work across differences. And we hear that all the time, right? Especially in this political climate. Okay, fine. And I remember coming into this thinking, oh, I'm a bridge builder. This is going to be great. I was made for this. And I got in there and I was like, oh, this is, like racial divide. This is like intense, and the divide, it's not just us, it's coming from the outside influences too, and like very powerful other elected officials. um but I think that those relationships and really building that trust is so critical, and it's really part of the work, and it can be hard, right? Because somebody said something that offended me, or I really don't have much in common with that person. And I would tell my board colleagues, we don't have to be best friends, but we have to talk to each other, and we have to figure out how to get this work done, and we have to figure out where we align. Otherwise, one, what are we here for? And two, we will never make the change that we need to for students if we can't figure out how to get across our differences. And mostly, like just very, I don't want to say small differences, but it's like those, you offended me, you said something, um, but it's things that we have to figure out how to overcome. And like I mentioned, I'm pretty stubborn, so I don't give up easily, right? If somebody would say something offensive to me or would be like, I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm like, no, I'm going to figure out a way to talk to you. Knock on your door and I'm going to keep texting and calling you. And, I'll follow you down the hallway at the board meeting if you're ignoring me because the work is too important.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds
So
like a theme, Judith, of sharing. Just when I listen to you, it truly is a commitment to the mission, the children, knowing that even if you can't move forward, that we can prevent backward slide, and that it's about relationships, staying in relationship with people, especially, it seems like, especially differences. How do you build the relationship, maintain the relationship, and keep that front and center? Judith, I want to ask you about, okay, so say I want to run. This is hard. You continue to pile on about how hard it is going to be, but I want to do it. I want to run. And so talk about, please, Judith, give advice. What do I need to actually win? Because that's so hard. And like, what exactly does that
yes,
mean? What did
yes.
it take for you to win?
A lot of people will say, "Oh, you need money," which you do. I mean, I'm not going to lie. If you have money to do mailers and paid social media ads, all that helps. But I will say the best thing that you can do is talk to voters. Those are the people that are going to go to the polls and vote for you. And it's very easy. You'll see a lot of candidates going to, all these meetings or being on TV and trying to get endorsed by other elected officials. They're not the ones voting for you. So block walking, canvassing is the best. It is the only thing that will make the difference. And hearing from a candidate directly can really make a huge impact. I mean, think about like how many candidates have knocked on your door over the years? Probably not many, maybe not at all. The second time I ran, I personally knocked on 3,500 doors in 3.5 months. I mean, I was block walking literally 7 days a week, Saturdays and Sundays all day. And I had family and, volunteers helping as well. But me personally, I was running against an incumbent with a lot of name IDs. So I knew I had to, double down and work a lot harder probably than most candidates. And I did win by a very large margin. The first time I ran 9 years before, like I had mentioned, I had zero name ID. We did the same thing. My family and I knocked on so many doors. We actually knocked on all the doors twice because I went into a runoff. So it was like, here we go, all the precincts again. We're knocking on the doors again. So folks knew, got to know who I was, got to know who my family was. And I feel like that is so powerful. It's a lot of work, right? Houston's hot and muggy. So it's like, and it's not like, oh, I want to just, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I want to walk, several miles and knock on doors. But once I was doing it, I would enjoy it, which is crazy, right? Most people are like, what? But you get to talk to people and have really amazing conversations, right? And it wasn't like I would speak to some one person for hours and hours because I'm like, okay, I got to hit more doors. But just in a few moments, that connection, hearing what their concerns are, their hopes and dreams for education, whether or not they had their own children or grandchildren or maybe no children at all, but everyone wants something better for kids and just being able to connect with them. That just kept fueling me for the next doors that I would go knock on. So I can't emphasize that enough. And making connections with folks, going to your civic club meetings, not just the one you live in, but others, is really important too. Start going to board meetings. A lot of people run for the board and have never been to a board meeting or don't really pay attention to what's going on or what decisions are being made. Try to learn as much as you can about governance. It's kind of nuanced and a very unique space to be in. So if you're able to read books or attend a training, I would definitely encourage you to do that. And nothing beats grassroots community, right? Being connected to other parents, other leaders in the community that care about public education, so that when you do go run, you have a network of folks that are like, oh yeah, I want to support her. She's doing great work, right? I've seen her work. I know what she's about. She's genuine. She's been showing up. If you just kind of come out of nowhere, people are like, who's that? I don't even know who that is, right? So having at least a little bit of a base can really help.
Love that, Judith. There's so much of it where you got to really put yourself out there and talk to people. Again, this relationships piece, Judith, it's a
Yes.
theme. I love also that it fed you. Like it seems really aligned to who you are. So you got to be yourself. And I mean,
Mhm.
it is a grind. I'm so grateful, Judith, to your service. And
Thank
thank you so
you.
much for, as a fellow mom, putting yourself out there. It's hard, hard, hard. With that, Judith, let's go to lightning round questions. Are you ready?
Yes,
Okay, chocolate or vanilla,
always chocolate. It's the best.
cooking or takeout?
Cooking. I love cooking. I always say it's one of my love languages. I love
Mm.
to cook for others.
Would you rather climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
I'm terrified of heights, so definitely climb a mountain. I can feel the ground under me.
Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
Never. Although my Gen Z kids are like, Mom, like what? Cover your toes. Put the socks on. They don't understand it.
How would you rate your karaoke skills? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being Mariah Carey.
I'm pretty decent. I mean, I would say a six. Put on some Selena, and I can definitely karaoke the Selena.
What's a recent book you read?
I just finished like 2 nights ago the book that John King, he's the former Secretary of Education under President Obama. It's called Teacher by Teacher. Highly recommend it. He's someone I've always admired, but it's his memoir, it's his story, his journey, but also just kind of like everything about public education inside of it. So pick it up if you haven't read it yet.
What's your favorite way to practice self-care?
Dancing. I can dance all the time. It's my happy place.
What's a good professional development you've done?
So I'm currently in American Leadership Forum. It's in several cities across the country. I am really enjoying it. It's very introspective, but also figuring out how to work across lines of difference and a different way to approach problems and how you ask questions. It's been fascinating so far. I'm really enjoying it.
What's your definition of a boss mama?
I think someone who shows up authentically and in their values and really practicing self-care so you can continue to be a boss mama. And when I think of a boss mama, I think of like my mother and my grandmother who were just, they work so hard to do everything for their kids and their grandkids and to give us a better life. And I can only, halfway fill their shoes. So always honoring my ancestors.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Whew. I kind of shortchanged myself when I was much younger. So I would say that anything is possible. In high school, I did debate and I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to be a lawyer. But I literally never told anyone that because
Hmm.
I thought, oh, that's for smart people. I didn't view myself as smart.
Where can we find you, Judith? Like LinkedIn, anywhere like that?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn, Judith A. Cruz on LinkedIn. On X, I am Judith 4 with the number 4. Student. And then on Instagram, I'm Judith for Students, but written out FOR. So yes, follow
And
me.
then last question, what final ask, recommendation, or parting thoughts can you share?
Um, don't be afraid to ask questions and to seek out others, right? I talk about these relationships, but even as you're trying to find ways to grow as a person or to grow your career, or if you're thinking about running for school board, like start reaching out to folks and having one-on-one meetings with them. Ask them about their path. Ask them what motivates them, and it'll be amazing what you learn. And then those relationships will lead to other relationships. So I'm always like, don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to reach out to others.
Amazing. Judith, thank you so much for all your work and for being here and sharing your story.
Thank you.